And good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Friday. Again, it's Friday finally, but not a good end to the week for local shares here. That inch lower by 0.5%. The PSEi now at 6,851.38. That's a 3-day losing streak here for the main board. So our shares already correcting after making a climb in recent weeks. Well, according to COL Financial, while a correction is expected in the near term, shares are unlikely to return to the bottom recorded in May. Now, April 10 of COL says the rebound has legs after infections have fallen and vaccination rate picked up. She says any correction that might spring from the Fed tightening should only be temporary, given that a strong economy will offset the higher funding costs. Now, one stock exceeding the sell-off in the main bourse today is Megaworld. Megaworld is one of the day's worst performer, the property player. In its annual stockholders meeting, said funds raised from its Mega REIT IPO will be used to complete 21 new office and commercial projects across 10 townships. So they're looking at 15 office projects, 5 malls, and 1 hotel. Now, talking about their 5-year growth pipeline, Chief Strategy Officer Kevin Tan said the office sector is resilient and that they can reach or surpass their targets in 2021. They do admit, however, that the recovery of their retail and hotel segments will depend on the economy's opening and revival of consumer confidence. Again, Megaworld joining the sell-off in the PSEi. It's down 2.5% to 3 pesos and 11 centavos a share. Now, they're not alone though. Quite a number of stocks shed off over 2% today. You have a BDO having it worst here. It's down by as much as 0.28%. A number of shares also declining by more than 2%. There's LT Group, there's Megaworld, San Miguel, and also PLDT. But one stock managed to make some hefty gains today, and that has pretty much been the trend for it all year round. I'm talking about ICTSI. It's the day's best performer, up by 4.6% to 160 pesos a share. It's already been weeks that investors are loading up on the stock on the back of its expansion plans locally and overseas. It still is, of course, the PSEi's best performer year to date, the only stock with a double-digit gain of 29.55% in 2021. But just like ICTSI, one stock also made quite a climb today. That is AC Energy. It ended Friday up 4.2%, pushing its weekly gain to 8%. It's 5th straight week in the green. Now, the bullishness on the stock driven by expectation that it will be added to the main index. Now, April 10 said that might happen by August once the index is rebalanced. She says it will most likely come out strong as local funds that track the index will have to buy ASEN before the mid-August deadline. Again, AC Energy today in the green at 8 pesos and 50 centavos a share. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. McDonald's is all fired up with the launch of its BTS meals today. The fast food chain is rolling out the themed meals in all stores nationwide and is expecting to sell up to 500,000 orders. This year, McDonald's says it will open twice as many stores as last year, with an emphasis on drive-through joints.
Opening at least 30 new stores this year. This comes from a store opening number of 16 in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. And in terms of what kind of stores will be opening, so we're really focused on growing our drive-through stores, because this is one of our drivers or that kept us afloat amidst the pandemic when dine-in was heavily restricted.
The country received its first vaccine shipment for the private sector on Thursday. This includes 500,000 doses of Sinovac shots purchased by the Federation of Filipino Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry. The shipment also comes with an additional 1 million Sinovac doses for government's public vaccination drive. Association President Henry Lim Bonyong thanked China for the vaccine support for the Philippines that's seen to fuel economic recovery. As the vaccination of the A4 cluster is already underway in the country, there is now more focus on the inoculation drive among organizations. But just how deliberate can they get in their rollout schemes? Let's find out from Teng Alday, CEO of consultancy firm Mercer Philippines. Good afternoon, Teng. All right, Teng, Ms. Teng of Mercer, if you can just turn on your camera for us. Okay, I guess we're just having a bit of a technical issue here, but then again, like what we reported earlier, you have a number of vaccines already from the private sector arriving to the country, starting off with that 500,000 dose of Sinovac vaccines, coming, of course, from the FFCCII or the Filipino Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Again, that shipment also comes with an additional 1 million Sinovac doses for government's public vaccination drive. Again, we're trying to reach Teng Alday of Mercer Philippines as we try to talk about, of course, a vaccination drive among the private sector. They did come up with a survey back in February in which it shows that 2% of only 2% of organizations will actually require the vaccination of their employees. And now we already have Teng Alday of Mercer. Good afternoon, Teng. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Jester.
All right,
for
okay,
the technical difficulties.
No worries, no worries. That happens, of course. Well, yeah, like what I mentioned earlier, you did a survey back in February, and it did show that 68% of organizations rather, won't even consider requiring the inoculation of their employees. Just how many organizations are we talking about here, and what's driving this fear of actually making it a requirement among their employees?
So we surveyed about 62 participants, and this is mostly coming from the manufacturing, services, high-tech companies. And about 31% of these companies have presence in 50 other countries. About 31% have, headcount between 5,000 to about 50,000. So this is a good mix of, small, medium, and large organization.
But more to the point, what's really driving this fear of making inoculation, if I can even call it fear, what's driving that sense of hesitancy in a way of making it mandatory for employees?
Well, there are two reasons that came out in the survey. One is the fear that employees have, effects on the vaccine, negative effects on the vaccine. The second is about the labor regulations. They fear that, there might be some repercussions in actually mandating the vaccine to their employees.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think in a way, will this compromise the efforts of the private sector to actually purchase vaccines?
Well, I don't think so, because the survey actually shows that there is, strategic intent of many of the organizations to start looking into the vaccination program. In fact, when we did a webinar starting May, we found out, and it was well attended by 400 HR and business leaders, it shows their commitment.
Okay, it seems as though that we lost Teng Alday of Mercer Philippines there, but like what she did say, there's somehow growing interest, at least among organizations, to come up with a good communication strategy for the vaccination of the private sector. Their employees, of course, included. Again, that survey happened last February, and it did show that only 2% of organizations will be requiring the vaccination of their employees, and that 68% won't even consider it. Again, nationwide, of course, the inoculation of the A4 cluster, which are, of course, the economic frontliners, has already started, at least in the NCR Plus bubble and other surrounding provinces. just a few days ago. Of course, we did have as well the inoculation of the A5 sector. But for now, we're going to pause for a quick break. Keep it here on One News, Business World Live. We'll return. And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. This time around, we'll try to get back to Teng Alday, CEO of consultancy firm Mercer Philippines. Good afternoon, Ms. Teng.
Hello, Chester. I'm back.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. Okay. So again, going back to our discussion earlier, one good thing as well that we managed to see in your report from that survey back in February is, of course, one of the options here among organizations is to actually offer incentives for employees. How did organizations respond to the possibility of rewarding or incentivizing inoculation or vaccination?
Since most of the concerns was really about vaccine safety and the dollar regulation, there was not much, encouragement from the establishments to actually offer any form of incentive. And what happened was that only about 2% are willing to give any cash or give checks. About 8% was wanting to put in some form of special spending account. So, but other than that, there is about 49% that says that they're not giving any incentives at all.
Mm-hmm. Now, also, you did mention earlier that you came up or you had a seminar back in May. Would you say that there's already been a change in sentiment when it comes to vaccination of employees?
Well, I think it's picking up. And that's the reason why Mercer wants to go into this, to be able to help a lot of the private companies understand their issues, taking a look at what are the concerns and challenges so that we can come out with solutions that can help them. In fact, what we've done is we've reached out to subject matter experts to be able to find out what are the things that we can do together to partner and move the vaccination program in a more responsive way.
And what has been so far the output from that or from those set of discussions?
There has been a pickup in many of our clients. So we're now in talks with them, helping them to connect them with the vaccine distributors, helping them to find the right administrator so that they can actually plan for it. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about buying the vaccine or purchasing the vaccine. It's about making plans to be able to administer the program because it takes minimum of 3 weeks just to set it up.
Now, that of course boils down to effective communication strategy. What are organizations doing on that end?
At this end, it's so very heartful to see that organizations have now started to come up with their communication plan. And in fact, this is the key metric that we need to do to be able to help employees understand why it's important to have a vaccination program. Because at the end of the day, if everybody is going to be vaccinated, then it's easy for them to make them come back to their workplaces. So this is one of the things that we're helping our clients to develop good communication programs.
Now, what's a possible compromise here among groups should there be employees who decide not to get vaccinated?
Well, you have to balance the metrics of this because it depends on the industry. Like there are some industries, healthcare, for example, wherein it's not just the responsibility of taking care of their employees, but more importantly, the people that they are, given to take care of. And unlike the professional services sector, for instance, many of which the work can be done at home, and therefore the risk of infection is much lower compared to metrics in place.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
So what we're doing is that we need to put the discussion on the table.
Okay, I think we lost Teng Alday there again. Teng Alday, CEO of Mercer Philippines. I think we're having a bit of a problem this time around with the audio, but we did get a lot of insights there from Ms. Teng and how interest is already picking up among organizations in terms of interest in getting vaccinated among employees. Again, Teng Alday, CEO of Mercer Philippines. And those are the biggest stories this trading day, June 18, 2021. Catch Business World live again on Monday next week at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe. Philippines, have a great weekend.